up. We are, in fact, seeing our citizenship traded in for residency. Joining me now are Mark Meckler, president of Citizens for Self-Government, and via Skype, U.S. Senate candidate from Mississippi, Republican State Senator Chris McDaniel. Where were you in Louisville this weekend? We had a lot of fun, Senator McDaniel and I. A lot of the people that gathered at 8Apr this past weekend, where Senator McDaniel and I spoke, were grassroots Tea Party. Not the big ones. Freedom Works was organizing it. But these were the people that the Tea Party, the IRS was targeting. What church do you go to? Who's your pastor? What kind of prayers? What kind of prayers do you say? Right. Are your family members doing business with anyone in government? All these invasive questions that are never asked of progressive groups.
Right. Well, and the reality is that's the whole point, right? It was to intimidate. That was the point. The president has been joking since 2009 about auditing his political enemies. It was known at the highest levels that this was acceptable behavior. I can't say the president ordered it, but clearly he joked about doing it. And so the purpose was to intimidate and to silence political speech. And indeed, they did in many cases.
You know, Senator McDaniel, you and I spoke to 3,500 ticket buying people, not people that were showing up for free to get a free T-shirt or whatever. These are people that paid their own money. There were people from as far away as the Dominican Republic and people who were bikers. It was a very diverse and loud crowd, and these were the people that apparently the IRS thinks need to be cracked down on.
Yeah, I think so, and that's regrettable. These are the people that make up the backbone of this society, the backbone of this country. The idea that this government could be so large and so intrusive, whether it's the NSA or the IRS or the FEC, whatever the case may be, the idea that they would abuse those powers, these people should be alarmed. The entire American system should be alarmed at this, and it was great to see them stand up there at 8Apr. I look forward to one in Mississippi soon.
You think the Democrats just thought that this would just sort of wane the attention span? I mean, Democrat staffers, whenever we say Congressman Porter, we mean their staffers.
Right.
They clearly focus some of their staffers to go over the emails and the documents from the IRS. They say they have evidence of criminal behavior. That's not to be taken lightly.
It's not to be taken lightly. And I do think they thought it would go away. Look at history, right? We've got Benghazi, we've got Fast and Furious, and they've really been able to tamp down on these scandals over the long term. The difference is that the IRS is already a hated agency in the American public, and virtually 100% of the people, except for maybe those who work there, don't like the IRS. Really easy to keep this one alive. The American people should be scared. It touches everyone's life.
You know, Senator McDaniel, your campaign can be targeted like this. I mean, both the Democrats want you to fail at your bid for the Senate, and so do some establishment Republicans. You're taking on a guy who's been there 42 years, Thad Cochran.
Sure. This is an indictment on the system. It's an indictment on what happens when we allow government to centralize authority in a location like Washington, D.C. Inevitably, it also centralizes all the negative traits of human behavior, whether it's greed or avarice or ambition, and ultimately corruption. That's the whole point of this. That's why we're fighting. Too much power is in one central location. Let's take that power, let's diffuse it among the branches, among the people, back to the states where it belongs. But this is absolutely unacceptable, and yes, nothing would surprise me at in this day and age. These types of political games have become commonplace, it seems, in D.C.
Let me put this to both of you. I'll start with you, Mark. The DOJ passed on any further investigation or prosecution of Lois Lerner. But what happens if the Republicans say, no, wait a second, we've got actual, tangible evidence. You have to look at this. You have to prosecute this woman. Here you go. And they choose not to.
Well, I think we're in trouble. We heard today the DOJ, obviously through Holder, said that they have enormous discretion on whether to prosecute or whether to enforce the laws. He's obviously exercising that discretion regularly. I think we have a constitutional crisis. Literally, we have law breaking going on at some of the highest levels of the federal government, and we have a federal government agency charged with enforcing those laws, choosing not to. That's a pretty radical moment in American history.
Senator McDaniel, I mean, again, if they've produced, this is a big if they produce actual evidence and the DOJ passes not once but twice, then what?
Oh, listen, I have a handful of questions myself. I'd like to know who else is involved here. I'd like to know what she knew and when she knew it. And the idea that the Justice Department would turn a blind eye to this, what happens is it causes the people of this country to lose faith in their government, as if we need a reason at this stage. But once we lose faith in the law, once we lose faith in the concept that justice is blind, that we are a nation of laws and not of in, then we have a real problem. It is a constitutional crisis, and it needs to be corrected once and for all.
You know, this is the kind of thing that if the Democrats are going to say this doesn't go to the White House, then why protect this woman? Why keep her from more testimony in front of the public? Why? Unless by keeping her out of the public sphere, you're protecting somebody.
Well, I think what they're protecting is the system they've built, and this is a system that's designed to punish what they consider political dissidents. It's a new era in American politics where people like you and I who criticize the government are not just the opposition. We are considered dissidents to be crushed in silence, and they built the system. Let's remember, Lois Lerner goes back to the FEC, where she also persecuted conservatives. What did she get for that? They found her literally guilty of doing this stuff, of wrongdoing.
Then she went to
she got a promotion, right? And she went to the IRS. This is the system that's been built to act against Americans who stand up to government tyranny.
You know, it's funny. I'm hearing in my head, Senator McDaniel, Nancy Pelosi, the culture of corruption, the Republican swamp. I mean, it seems like they drained the swamp and filled it with their own alligators.
That's the problem. That seems to be what both parties attempt to do, is to control the apparatus. And sometimes the apparatus controls them. And when I say apparatus, I'm talking, of course, about Washington, D.C. But you're exactly right. For all the talk they gave the corruption, it was just that. It was talk. And he's right. The idea that this can continue is something that reasonable people should be outraged about. And I'm hoping through shows like this, the American people do become outraged. It's time to be outraged. It's time to take a stand against this government and these types of abuses.
Am I being naive thinking this should bother everyone? I mean, we talk about, the right to disagree and the free market of ideas, and there are some things we just don't do in this country, like what's going on with Venezuela. We don't prosecute politics in this country, and we have this term Nixonian or McCarthyism, and very few Republicans defend Nixon on that, but I thought that was something we didn't do in this country, and it seems like the Democrats are defending that thing.
I think they are. I think we've crossed the Rubicon in that regard, and I think it's up to us as citizens to push back. I don't expect this will be fixed in Washington, D.C. Committee hearings, requests to DOJ, whatever it is, I don't expect they'll do anything about it. It's going to take citizens like us, like the congressman, rising up and fighting back against this kind of stuff. That's why we have a civil litigation against the IRS. By the way, the IRS has defended itself in the litigation, moved to dismiss, and said, people like you and I, if we're targeted by the government, we have no remedy.
Oh, really?
That's literally their argument. You have no remedy. There's nothing you can do about it.
It sounds like this is why guys like you have to take the Senate, Chris. I mean, what other way? I mean, because the House Republicans many times will say, well, we only have one half of Congress. Well, what if you have both chambers of Congress? Then you could really lay pressure on the administration.
Well, the problem is system-wide, no question. It would be nice to have both houses of Congress, but at the same time, we can't change the city of Washington, D.C. until we change the people we send to Washington, D.C. And this corruption is so widespread that at some point we need new blood, new energy, and new courage in that city to make a real change. Until we do that, I'm afraid we're going to spin our wheels for an awfully long time.
I'd like to add something to that. I think the problem's even deeper than new blood. You've got a system that's broken. You've got an entire system from the top down and the inside out that's broken. We have to fix the system. It's not enough to send new people. You can send good people to Congress. As long as the system is broken, things will be bad. And I think the congressman and I agree. The idea is to devolve power out from Washington, D.C., to give it back to people in the states, in their communities, where we actually trust people.
Or a federal executive who doesn't tolerate bad bureaucrats. State Senator McDaniel, Mark, thank you so much for joining me in studio. Now, coming up next, hypocrisy.